Well, hello everyone. How are you doing on Thursday? I think they would say that this is Thursday, I think. Isn't that correct? I think that's right. How are you? Good to see you. So glad that you would take some of your valuable time and come in and visit me and allow me to visit you. So thank you. Good to see you. Give me one second here. He's trying to drive and talk at the same time. Oh my gosh, how you doing? So welcome everyone. It is again Thursday and noon here in the Front Range in Colorado and wherever you are in the world. Hope you're doing well. I just invoke favor upon you and full restoration. I'm telling you that word restoration, read it, define it, apply it, take hold of it, claim it, make it yours. Restoration, folks, goes beyond just merely whatever you've encountered lost in this realm. It goes way up there. And today we're really going to be talking about how that restoration can be much more defined. So welcome everyone. Just want to say hello, Lori. Good to see all the moderators. Hello, Lois, Warrior Queen. How are you doing, my dear? Michiganor, Zora, Grace Thomas, Robin, good to see you. Jesse, boy, there's just a lot of y'all on here. Had a chance to converse a little bit earlier. Tonight on the Steiger perspective, going to be doing, I guess we could say, a little detour, but it's right in the same venue that we're talking about, and that is the Dragon Wars. And I'm serious about this. Are we seeing a reawakening? Hello, Caroline. How are you doing? Flight risk. Mike, it's good to see you. I love that. I tell you, the girl with no spine. Hello, how are you doing? You know, I was just listening to the first Crosby, Stills, and Nash Young album. Man, you know, I'll digress just a second. There's times when I can get really into a meditative state, and I got my Lilith shirt just to show you that this is her sigil, and there we go. Powerful shirt, put it on. I felt like freaking Superman. I'm kidding. Someone's going to take that and just watch it. They're going to say, Steiger's just got this whole thing, man. He put on that Lilith sigil, and whoa. It's okay. Listen, we all live our lives to one degree, I guess, in superstitions. It's just the nature of us. So I had this out of body experience, literally about 15 minutes before I went live. And the overwhelming wave of one word, consciousness. And all of a sudden, it was like I was in this huge, I knew it was undefinable. And the thought came to me, imagine the first consciousness, the very first consciousness. What do you do? Put yourself in that. Think about it. You are consciousness, an expression of consciousness. We all are. And as we're studying the Liber Lilith, we are discovering that consciousness goes beyond the perception of what man perceives to be its limits. So when I started to come back in, I had to write this thought down. I was in the kitchen and, immediately had to get the whiteboard out. But it says, a soul of one is but a spirit of many. Pretty profound to me. It's like, okay, I think I'm getting this. A soul of one, yet a spirit of many. I wonder if I contend that we, when I say we, Homo sapiens, humanity, mankind, often wonder if the story is correct, that there has to be a patient zero. All right, we'll define patient zero in this case, in this mythos, as Adam. So atoms are, if we're doing, anyone who've ever watched the movie Outbreak, you know how they begin when pandemics start. You know, how do you find patient zero? So let's just all focus in on Adam. I was in this period of time, the thought pierced me, what would consciousness first do? The first conscious of us. What kind of, when you think of a mind, a force, a presence that can do that, that can even think of that, can think of us, the complexities, our personalities. You know, it's not a question so much of good or evil. It's a question of it's just is. Consciousness just is. Maybe that's the spark of Babylon. Who knows? So we have got a lot to cover here. So welcome everyone that's in here. I'm telling you, this is going to be school. So let's just get right to it. Now, I've gotten a lot of emails asking a little bit more on kind of the background of Lilith. I've had some emails, people trying to correct me and say, no, really, it's not Lilith. Lilith is a Hebraic deitrist, and, it's Inanna. Well, let's just set the record straight. Anything that's in the Hebrew came from Mesopotamia. It's just a fact. And as Dragnet used to say, the names of the characters have been changed to protect the innocent. The name is the same. So in this book that I have made available to you, let's just get it straight so we understand who Lilith is. She's Inanna. She's God. Yes. So no she-demon has ever achieved as fantastic a career as Lilith, who started out from the lowest of origins, supposedly was a failure. That's what I thought initially, as Adam's intended wife. Boy, did we build a mythos around that one. Became the paramour of lasciviousness spirits, hey, baby. Who's your daddy? Anyway, rose to the bride of Samuel, the demon king, ruled as queen of Zemargod and Sheba, and finally ended up as the consort of God himself. I'm going to tell you what, ladies, y'all need to get her book on success, because she just broke the glass ceiling. Hell, she just obliterated. It's amazing to see how the transformation, due to the patriarchic, monotheistic, matriarchal type of indoctrination we live in. The information age, isn't it interesting? We have the golden age, we have the dark ages, we have the Renaissance age. We're in the age of information. Knowledge is rushing into our species. I know Adam, and I do believe that there is a us named Adam in every sense of the word, whether it's metaphysical, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, whether it's scientifical. Well, there's a word, scientifical. I love that. So in any case, Adam, A-T-O-M, A-D-A-M. I mean, we just go through all the different reiterations of it. So Lilith. So the main features of Lilith, and you have to just say, is this mythological? Is this somehow, as Spock once said, all myth is based on truth. I think it was said much further than Spock, but anyway. So the biography first appeared in the Sumerian culture. You know, when I did the 39 first, she's in there. About the middle of the 3rd millennium BC, what she meant for the biblical Hebrews can only be surmised by the Talmudic period, 2nd to the 5th centuries AD. She was a fully developed evil she-demon, and during the Kabbalistic age, 13th to 16th centuries, she rose to the high position of queenly consort at God's side. Wow. You know, when you start and think about this, folks, this gets really interesting because here we go. So we look at her background, and what I'm contending here, Lilith and Anna, whatever the other names, Diana, I mean, we can go. Hathor. Our mother never left. And of course, an open mind, free thinking mind has to always have the chair that says, well, maybe it's none of the above. So in our circle, we have a chair that's titled that, maybe none of the above. You have to give it. So the earliest mention of a she-demon whose name is similar to that of Lilith is found in the Sumerian Kings list, which dates from right around 2400 BC. It states that the father of the great hero Gilgamesh was a Lulu demon. The Lulu was one of the 4 demons belonging to a vampire or succubi class. Incubus, succubus. The other 3 were Lilith, a she-demon, Erdat Lily, or Lilith's handmaiden, who visited men by night and bore them ghostly children, or Urdu Lily, who must have been her male counterpart and used to visit women and beget children by them. Originally, these were storm demons, but because of mistaken etymology, they became to be regarded as night demons. And you know, this is why I'm going through this book, this rare book that, listen, it immediately told me when I got it, I knew that when it was sent to me, the gentleman was spot on. I said, well, I wasn't even thinking about it. Anyway, I appreciate that because sometimes that's how triggers happen, you know. So Lilith's epithet was the beautiful maiden, but she was believed to have been the harlot and a vampire who, once she chose a lover, would never let him go without ever giving him real satisfaction. I often wonder about origins. You know, why did he stand up in I think it was the city of Ephesus, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that was the case. And number 1, renounced his love for Lilith, his belief in her, and then promptly castrated himself. Now, Origin says that he got it from a person by the name of Paul of Antioch. We only know one of Paul of Antioch. So if Paul, the Apostle Paul, had this book and apparently studied from it, because we can see it directly in his writings. So all I've got to say, well, there's something here. Now, she was unable to bear children and had no milk in her breast. According to the Sumerian epic, Gilgamesh and the Pupa, that's a good one, tree, and I'll show you what that looks like, dating from around 2000 BC, Lilith built her house in the midst of the Hulupu, I got it, willow tree, which had been planted on the bank of the Euphrates in the days of creation. I don't know, where have we heard that story before? Yeah, the tree of life. A dragon set up its nest at the base of the tree, and the zoo bird placed his young in its crown. Gilgamesh slays the dragon with his huge bronze axe, whereupon the zoo bird flees with his young to the mountain, and Lilith, terror-stricken, tears down her house and escapes to the desert. Now we understand where we read the love song, the song of Lilith, the song of Solomon, why she visited the travelers through the desert. A Babylonian terracotta relief, roughly contemporary with the above poem, shows in what form Lilith was believed to have appeared to human eyes. She is slender, well-shaped, beautiful, and nude with wings and owl feet. We'll see. You've seen it in there. You go anywhere and look at Inanna. You're going to see Lilith. She stands erect on two reclining lions, which are turned away from each other and are flanked by owls. On her head, she wears a cap embellished by several pairs of horns. In her hand, she holds a ring and rod combination. Evidently, this is no longer a lowly she-demon, but a goddess who tames wild beasts and, as shown by the owls on the relief, rules by night. So let's hope that this shows. Give me a second. I'll just come in here and we'll redo that to make sure that it does show. So give me 1 second, folks. I got lost. There we go. So let's get right into this other document. I just saw that it did work, so I know the next one I won't have to go through this exercise. So here we go. These are where the stories originated, at least the earliest we have records of. And here's the story. Once upon a time, a tree, a hulupua tree, a willow tree, had been planted on the banks of the Euphrates. This is the exact translation. It was watered by the Euphrates. The violence of the south wind plucked its roots, tore away its crown. The Euphrates carried it off in its waters. The woman roving about in fear at the word of An, roving about in fear at the word of Enlil, took the tree in her hand and brought it to I shall bring it to pure Inanna's fruitful garden. This was written before Genesis. This was dated before the Gilgamesh epic. The woman tended the tree with her hand, placed it by her foot. Inanna tended the tree with her hand, placed it by her foot. When will it be fruitful, throne for me to sit on, she said. When will it be a fruitful bed for me to lie on, she said. And there it is. There's the relief right there. This is Lilith. The tree grew big. Its trunk bore no foliage. In its roots, the snake, who knows no charm, set up its nest. In its crown, the imdruge bird placed its young. In the mist, a maid, Lilith, built her house. Now, could it be that Lilith is the handmaiden of Inanna? Well, I don't know. It seems like minds have thought this through, and I think there is two sides of the coin here. The always laughing, always rejoicing maid. Well, that doesn't sound like the Lilith that has been painted by history. I, the maid, Inanna, how I weep. Her brother, the hero, Gilgamesh, stood by her in this matter. He donned armor, weighing 50 manas about his waist. 50 manas were handled by him like 30 shekels. His axe of the road, 7 talents, 7 manas, and he took in hand. Apparently there it is, as we can see the battle. At its roots, he struck down the snake who knows no charm. In its crown, the eel bird took its young, climbed to the mountains, and in the mist, the maid Lilith tore down her house and fled to the waste. So here we go. And there is Lilith. Well, or Inanna. So I have this document. It gets into the earliest depictions that we have of Lilith. I'm going with that. Now, if it's Inanna, well, we're respectful of that as well. So this one here gets into the Kabbalist, how it all started. It talks about the wildcat shall meet with the jackals, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, yea, the night monster, and that's Lilith's name in Hebrew, shall repose there and shall find her a place of rest. And I have this document as well. Those of you who've gotten it, hopefully you've read it. And you will see how Elohim, Yahweh, are associated with Lilith. Dionysus, the cult of Bacchus. It's all tied together. I look at this, we talk about the Lishi. I know Jeff Doherty was doing a whole thing on it. It's all connected. And here is the story of how Yahweh and Lilith intertwine. The Ashroth. What's interesting is how she began to get her revisions going from the original Hebrew, Aramaic, to Latin, and then subsequently to English. Most people don't realize this, that there was no Bible until the 16th century, 1654 to be exact. The earlier one, 1611, is a rare edition, but you can get it. And by the way, in the 1611 edition of the King James, there is no name Jesus. It's Iusus. Hail Zeus. But anyway, so the Latin Vulgate is really, if you want to get kind of before Jerome screwed it all up, and he did, his own admissions, that you can begin to see some clarity to all this. So I did all of that so we could get to this. And please give me 1 second. I want to close a couple of these out. Thank you. So I hope that helped everybody in seeing where the documents are from, how I established the presentation. And I think it's important that you just don't think I just pulled it out of my derriere. Most of you who know me well enough here know that that ain't ever happening. All right, so let's get to right back where we had left off. If you remember, we had come to the point where God was deceived. Lilith tricked God into creating, or let me just say, providing the spark of divinity to man. And here we're just going to go really quickly because I got some other things to show you that begin to really start pull the story of where we're going today. So when Samuel looked upon Adam, he knew he had been deceived. The earth man's beauty was more perfect than his. Adam was whole and complete, whereas God was incomplete. Adam had the divine spark within him. That's key. Through this whole document, the one thing I have gotten is the fact that, folks, we got the divine spark. And apparently it must be pretty special. Very, very rare. Very, there's a word. The rage of the first archon, that's God, what everyone worships. God is the serpent. You're going to see it. God is the serpent. It's always been there. Every religion The god is the serpent. You know, you can't have 30,000 different religions and have them all be either wrong or all be right. They're either all wrong, and if they're not, then it means that all the religions are worshiping in one form of consciousness the same singularity of deity. The rage of the first icon flew out of his eyes in a fiery bolt that blasted the rocks and made the sea boil. Samuel cried out to the assembled host of angels and said, I am a jealous God, and there is no other God besides me. At this, the angels wondered and spoke between themselves, saying, if there are no other God, then of whom shall this God be jealous of? Samuel looked upon the luminous face of man, and his heart burned black with jealousy. And remember, the God of the Bible, Quran, Vedic even, is a vengeful God. Says he's a jealous God. Well, I don't know how you can be without sin and have jealousy within you. They won't discuss that. The earthman who had come into being out of the fire of his breath was greater in mind. That's important, consciousness, than any of the archons. In him existed no taint of wickedness. Adam was wholly pure through the power of his mother, Babylon, for she had put the spark with man. The first archon perceived the spark of clear light in man. The way a thing may be seen in a mirror that is not seen without the mirror, he, Adam, saw it. And by the way, I had to write myself a note on this one. I went in there and looked a little bit more in this, and it appears God can't look at himself in the mirror. He can't see his own reflection. Is that weird? Yeah. Samuel coveted the spark and sought to possess it. The archons and angels hated Earthman because he excelled them in power of thought, capital T, and was free of sin. They met and plotted together and set to burden Adam by awakening him in the heaviness of needs and desires, that is the remembrance of the body, but forgetfulness of the spirit. The thought of man became distracted. His eyes were turned away from the spark of Babylon and that glowed within Adam. The archons constructed a place for Adam of keeping him in a set place they called paradise. Adam was not allowed to wander beyond the boundary of paradise. Well, we talked about that last time. That's a prison. They told him, eat abundantly of the fruit of its tree, take pleasure under the sun. This was deception, for the fruit of their trees are bitter poison, and their pleasures are deceptions and death. In these things is forgetfulness of spirit. So they intoxicated Adam with luxury. The tree of life. In the midst of paradise grew a tree the archons called the tree of life. It is not a tree of life, but verily it is a tree of Gehenna, whose leaves are lies and whose roots drink corruption. Its seeds are desires, its flower sin, and its fruit is death. The shadow of the tree is hate. It sprouts in darkness, and he who eats of its fruit go into darkness and into hell. Now, let's get this straight. Every culture, folks, and I want this to be very clear because there were some people who were very confused on this. This is the Pope's public receiving hall. This is showing where Lilith, Satan, Lucifer, Beelzebub, Ashtaroth, blah, 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 Beel, all stand on the tetrahedron. Now, I don't particularly go for that, but okay. The imagery of whatever happened is replete. It cannot be denied the serpent, the great dragon, is what people of the world are worshiping. Always have been. And I guess until we wake up and take our rightful place, which we're going to find today, we're going to be subjugated to this. And so for everyone to understand, we're not talking Lucifer, but it's very clear they are. His flame, Lucifer, drawing his own creation. Here's the whole thing, the whole Easter thing. Flaming Lucifer finds mankind. I say, O Lucifer, who will never set? Christ is your son, who came back from hell, shed his peaceful light on mankind, now lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen. And here is from the Vatican's website. Its flame alight, O Lucifer, the morning come, and he, I say, O Lucifer, who does not know the going down thereof? Christ thy son, who, returning from the grave, human race, shed his peaceful light, and now lives and reigns forever and ever. Now, you got to look at, there's some very interesting terminology in here. Phraseology is what I call it. Look at this. What did Christ shed? Not blood, his light. Lucifer is not into blood sacrificing, never has been. Just so you know, it is everywhere. So I put this in here so that you understand something is going on. And I talked about this yesterday. NASA admits, as I was telling people yesterday, this should not have happened. They don't understand why it happened. There wasn't enough perturbations in the solar stream, the particles, to cause a geomagnetic storm. In fact, it was just the opposite. I contend, as I'll get more tonight in the Steiger perspective, I think the Dragon Wars are erupting. Let's get on with this. In the middle of paradise grew a second tree that the archons called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is the tree of foreknowledge of the pure light. And, here's the thing. There's a difference between trying to tell the future than those who actually have foreknowledge. And it's a gift. The roots of the tree drank from its fountain of life, water, that sustains the archons. Its leaves are music, its seeds are promise, its flowers desire. And apparently desire was capital, and apparently there's a good type of desire. The fruit of the tree is knowledge of the way to descend and the way to ascend. Those who eat of its fruit arise through the eons and unite with the Son of the perfect invisible Spirit, Origin, the Messiah. The tree of life, the archons left unfenced, that earthman might disobey the law of Samuel and eat it in sin. Now, let me just say this. No matter if God makes a law, he's making the law. So there's no foundation for it. Just because he says he's God, just because he says it's a sin, doesn't mean it's a sin. There's someone even higher than God, of which God has sinned. The tree of knowledge of good and evil, they covered with their wings and made hidden, that man should not eat of it, and awaken in shame to his nakedness of his folly. Man walked in a dream state of forgetfulness, a fugue, and obeyed the laws of Samuel and called him Lord. You see, there are so many freaking clues in this thing. You got to go back and read it again. Here is a clue that I missed. Man walked in a dream state of forgetfulness. So if you're being prosecuted in a court, the prosecutor is going to bring against you the fact of what your state of mind is and was, let's say if this is a criminal case. Man was not in his right state of mind, and in this altered state of consciousness called this God, this deity, God and Lord. Adam did not know that the light was in him and that God, Samuel, was only fire and darkness. Samuel cast a sleep over Adam that was not a true sleep, but an oblivion of the mind. Again, look at what these creatures do to us. They have the ability to literally interfere with the bioelectrical signals of our brain. In the series Stargate SG-1, the Goa'uld, the gods, Hathor, and the other top ghouls had a device, as we all remember, that held in their hand. And they would put it right where the third eye was. You remember? I think it's the same technology. God sought to unite with the spark that shone from Adam's face. His face was illuminated. He didn't need darkness. Adam, even if he was in darkness, would have shown it away by his very presence. Speaks a lot about us. The spark was not a thing that could be captured or held apart. The chief archon took a pattern from the left side, the pattern. Ruth and I talked about this yesterday, from the left side of Adam as he lay asleep, and made it a vessel that he filled with the portion of his light. I mean, I'm getting this thing that it literally, they put a gash in him. Wherever that gash is, and I know medically there's something about that, and we'll get into that later, but that essence. The shape of the vessel was female. She was called Eve, the first earth woman. Adam and Eve. When Adam awoke, he looked upon the woman and recognized in her his own image. She was born out of his own pattern, and he loved her as he loved himself. Adam said to her, "Verily, you are bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. We will cleave together and be as one." Again, the wrath of God was against the wondrous mud, and the host of archons hated man for his glory. Yes, wondrous mud. God covets Eve. It was the will of God to lie and have intercourse with the woman in secret while the man slept, and thereby enthrall the power of the spark that glowed within her. God sought to infuse its power of the spark into his own works. As before, he had liberated it by union with Lilith, his consort. So he's following a pattern of his own. Call it superstition. This ability to create was only when he was in line with Lilith. Well, we know the angel, or Mosel, made that, well, that wasn't going to happen again. The beauty of Eve was like no other creature, and it aroused his lust. It burned deep within his loins to possess her. Eve was innocent, did not know that she was naked. The host lusted after her. So it wasn't just God, it was the angels as well. Lilith intervenes. Lilith saw the purpose of Samuel, and she waxed black of countenance. The beauty of Eve was greater than her own. This was because the spark of the mother shone bright within Eve's life essence. Folks, there is so much on there. Each one of these is mind-blowing when you let them talk to you. The beauty of Eve came from the light, but the beauty of Lilith is of the shadows. What did God clothe Adam and Eve with? Shadows. Lilith still lusted after Samuel, but could no longer have intercourse with him. The mutilation of the blind dragon kept them apart, and the loveliness of Eve was as gall and wormwood in her mouth. In the darkness, this is where Lilith changes everything. In the darkness and waning of the moon, she changes into an owl. She flew to the topmost boughs of the tree in the midst of paradise that is called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Lilith, with a shrill, shrinks. She summons Eve away from her bed before God has seduced her. Yeah. The woman followed Lilith, cries to the root of the tree. You know, I thought it was strange. Never mind. I'll have to, but there has been an owl. Actually, it's been here for a couple of years, and it's very interesting. So Lilith wondered at the mud, at its beauty. Oh, what can you say? Eve never saw the tree, for it was always in the past. It had been hidden behind the wings of angels. Lilith said to Eve, "Awake from the death of your sleep. Arise from the clouds of your intoxications. You are a god who has fallen from your estates." Now, it's capital G and estates. Eat of the fruit of this tree and recognize your nakedness. Lilith transformed herself into her serpent shape and extended a fruit of the tree to the woman between her jaws. Wondering and considering Lilith's words deeply, so Eve, she was intelligent. Her mind was greater than God's. Ate of the fruit. You know, we've always been pictured that somehow she was deceived. That's how the story goes. Otherwise, you can't have the sin story. What if Eve made this of her full will? That was her will. The eyes were open to her nakedness, and she knew shame. Eve opens Adam's eyes. Eve ran with the fruit to Adam and told him what the serpent had revealed, that they are gods. I could only imagine that conversation. I mean, Eve's already figured out she's naked. And she realizes Adam is too. Probably was a shock, but hey. Adam, considering the words of Eve, ate of the fruit also. I think that they had an intelligent conversation. I really do. I think they weighed this thing out. His eyes were open to his nakedness, and he knew shame, as did the woman. They found leaves and covered themselves and hid from the wrath and anger of Samuel. God curses Adam and Eve and earth. When the chief archon saw that man and woman had withdrawn themselves from his presence, he became wrathful and full of hate for both. Adam and Eve saw that God was a serpent and incomplete. Like, oh man, they figured it out. Samuel understood at once that they had eaten the fruits of the tree. And again, that word was pearl. So I went back. Apparently they went for more. It certainly leads one to be able to draw a conclusion as such. God cursed them both and the earth. My question is why? Why did God curse the earth? It doesn't make any sense. This is one of the mysteries that I still can't figure out why any God would curse the earth. He cursed the earth that they walked on. God never did create the earth. It was here before Samuel. Adam and Eve saw the ignorance of darkness that was within God, but they were afraid and did not censure God, for they had the power to do so. Another part of this that has been overlooked. We subjugate ourselves to unseen gods, deities, never questioning the fact, why are we subjugating ourselves? Samuel cast both of them out of paradise and clothed them in skins of shadows. Samuel set an archon in the gate of the east with a fiery sword. I think it was a laser, but all lust comes from God. The buck's got to stop somewhere, Jack. When Eve went forth from paradise, she was yet a virgin. All lust and fornication among men is from the chief archon, Samuel, Jehovah Elohim God, the great serpent that has deceived the creation, born from the fire of his own rebellious spirit. Men have been trained to follow his example in sin. All women imitate the tempting snares of Lilith, Samuel's consort. God rapes Eve. When God had driven Eve out of paradise, he repented of his rashness, saying, I will lie with the daughter of man. And he sought to beget a son. There's another one of those things. You're going, what? So just to let you know, the mythical person that the world perceives that was crucified was not the first son of God. You're going to see. He pursued Eve on shadowy wings. He came upon Eve as she was preparing herself in the bedchamber of her husband Adam. As the thunderbolts fall from heaven, or as the hawk folds its wing and swoops upon its prey, so God, Samuel, the ancient serpent, fell upon Eve and raped her repeatedly. His lust knew no end. The divine intervenes. Samuel sought to defile the luminous spark of life that shone brightly within Eve. The omnipotent spirit looked down from his high throne and understood the wicked purposes of Samuel. He sent his angel, Armozel, to snatch back the spark of Babylon from out of the vessel of the woman before the archon penetrated her maidenhood. The lust of Samuel was satisfied, but the light was not polluted. Adam discovers the rape of Eve. Adam came upon his wife. When he saw the filth of the blood and the impure seed that stained her thighs, he knew the serpent had mounted her. This was the stain of the first menstrual discharge, the curse of woman forever hence, cast upon her by God himself to remind Adam he, God, violated his wife first with his seed in her womb. Adam turned away and denied Eve his caresses. Eve waxed hot for with the scum of the serpent that foamed inside her womb. Eve used her enticements of body to seduce Adam until he lied with her in her impurity. Adam added his seed to the seed of the serpent inside Eve's womb. The birth of Cain. In the fullness of time, a man-child was born. Eve wrapped him in the hem of her gardens and brought him to Adam, saying, I have gotten a man from the Lord. Eve said this because it was so. The face of the child was red with indignation, and the eyes of the man-child were black with rage. On its head hung a forelock of hair, black as the wings of a raven. The man-child never laughed. The name of the boy was Cain. Adam thought him the first of his loins, but Eve knew he was the spawn of the serpent. Now, folks, this is critical. When we do get the Sapien Summit, this is going to have to be examined. We already know by the human genome that this is true. But this is a direct contamination of our species. It gets worse. The birth of Abel, not as pure as one would think. In the fullness of time, a second child was born. Adam continued to lie with Eve in her blood. It's the only time he would have sex with her is when she was on her period. The face of the infant was fair and its eyes were blue. The hair of the child shone with the gold of the sun itself. When the boy attained his manhood, he sang songs of his own making while he tended the sheep of his father Adam. The name of the boy was Abel. He was truly the first fruit of Adam's loins, but a terrible fate descended upon his head from the sin of his father. The sin here is the only way you can track it back was the fact that Adam was having coitus with Eve on her periods of the month. Strange, I know. Cain's Folly. Cain made offerings to the Lord, that is Samuel, the chief archon. Cain's heart was rebellious and prideful as his father. Abel made offerings from his flock. By the way, this is the first mention of offering a blood sacrifice. Always another one. Why the blood? Why the blood of animals? Why the blood of man? Strange. Abel's heart was gentle in his breast. His thoughts were obedience. Samuel, now this is another key point. Look at what this God did to his begotten son. Apparently, it's no only begotten son. There are, anyway. Samuel accepted Abel's sacrifice and turned his back on his only begotten son, Cain's gifts. It is written, Cain gave in arrogance. Cain hated Abel because the Lord favored Abel instead of his own son. Cain struck Abel, his brother, to a death. To a death. Not to death, to a death. God curses his own son. Samuel bemoaned the murder of Abel, and his anger was hot, white hot with wrath. God cursed the earth that Cain should gain no profit out of it. This God curses a lot. Hey, if you don't believe me, go to Deuteronomy 28, starting in about verse, I think, 30. Always amaze me. The blessings are this big. The curses are that big. Samuel loved the son of Adam more than his own seed. The earth would no longer bring forth any nourishment to Cain. Cain left the fields and flocks of Adam. Cain was a murderer and would have suffered death had not Samuel put a fiery brand upon his face. By this mark, the wild beast shunned him. Cain marries Lilith's daughter. Oh, I told you folks this was going to get good. Cain traveled east of paradise to a distant land on the plains and took a wife. She was not a woman, but a daughter of Lilith, begotten by Samuel through the blind dragon. Folks, this just opens up a whole lot of what TF. If they look like women, men, how does a human man, woman know? I continue. Her name was Nopho. She was a demon of secret desires. Upon her, Cain begot Enoch. Cain built a city. It was called after the son of Cain. Now, here's a question. Where did Cain get this knowledge at? I mean, you got a cat that's, was a farmer. Yeah. Enoch begot Triad, who begot Mahujael, who begot Methuselah, who begot Lamech. All the line of Cain sprang from lustful couplings with the daughters of Lilith. Think about that one. Gets better. The previous slides present several challenges, that the least of which is the contamination of the human bloodline. This clearly indicates a mixed species. Mankind is more serpent than human. Cain's wife, Nopho, presents another challenge. This indicates she was not human at all, but a serpent that would indicate that bloodlines has infected itself into Adam's bloodline. The next challenge is, where did Cain acquire the knowledge to build a city? Going from a farmer to a builder of a city is quite the jump in the evolution ladder. Is this bloodline still flowing through our veins? Lamech marries demons. Lamech took 2 demons of the wilderness to be his wives. One was named Adah, and the other was Zillah. Upon Adah, he begot Jabal, who was wise in all the ways of sacrifice and reading signs. Adah had another son named Jubal, who sang songs and hymns of praise and worship before graven idols. Upon Zillah, she bore a son named Tubal-Cain, who taught the way of making of weapons of war. Zillah gave birth to a daughter named Nameo. She was a seducer and a sorceress skilled in incantations and the making of talisman. Folks, I'm not going to say anything. I'll let the words. This Nameo, woo! Get ready. Nameo. In appearance, Nameo looked like Lilith. Above the navel, she is formed as a woman. Below her navel, she is sometimes woman and sometimes a consuming fire. Nameo put on her enticements and seduced her brother, Tubal-Cain, to lay with her. Likewise, she used her allurements to arouse the lust of Lamech, and when she had coitus with her father and had received his seed upon the seed of her brother, she put on wings of darkness and flew away laughing in the wickedness of her heart. I kid you not. Lamech murders Cain. Lamech was in great distress and remorse for the act of incest with his daughter, and in his anger raised his hand against Cain and killed him. It was the curse of Cain that gave rise of the sinfulness of Lamech. This, the judgment of Samuel, was fulfilled against Cain for the murder of Abel, his brother. And what's so sad about this, we see murder begets murder. Violence begets violence. God could have taken the high road here and had been merciful, as he says he is, and had forgiven all of this. Didn't. Adam laments. After the murder of Abel, Adam did not have sex with Eve for 130 years. Adam said, "Why should I beget sons for murder? A man is lifted up from the dust, and the dust he returns. Better, by far, were he never born." He made a bed for himself and slept apart from Eve. Eve wept bitterly. She was empty and went unfulfilled. The stain of the serpent continued to lie upon her. Lilith rapes Adam. It's all in the family. Great was the corruption of Adam, for he had lusted for Eve in her time of blood discharge. Adam would only lie with Eve and her blood, and buried his seed into the filth of the serpent. Lilith, queen of harlots, had not ceased to desire connection with Adam. When she saw the death of Adam's wickedness, she grew bold within herself, for Adam was superior to her and Samuel, and came to Adam while he was sleeping. She flew in through his open mouth and entered his flesh. In his dreams, she came to him. He was not strong enough to resist her seduction. Folks, the dreams imply here an actual state of consciousness of reality. I mean, how could you be guilty of a sin if you're asleep? Think about that. She stretched her serpent body across Adam's body and drew his manhood deep inside her to draw his heat and take his seed to engender demons. Adam fathers to earth demons. Nameo, daughter of Lamech, whose mother was Zillah, demon of the wilderness, also came to Adam to have intercourse and take his heat, seed. With her sorceries, she fashioned dreams of unlawful lust that drew his pollutions, his semen. She caught his seed in a silver cup and carried it back to her abode. I say it's a medical lab, beneath the waves of the Western Sea. There she used it to engender venoms and spirits. This suggests something much more going on here. Think genetic engineering. Eve is restored. After the death of Cain, the invisible spirit sent the angel Armozel to Eve. Armozel restored to Eve that which had been taken from her, to guard it from defilement. Folks, if they guard that, I wonder how much more they're guarding of us. Once again, the pure light shone from Eve's countenance. Adam looked upon Eve, and the love that had withered sent forth green shoot. Adam ceased to receive the embraces of Lilith and Nameo. Adam returned to his wife and lay with her wholesomely in accordance with the law. I think he finally figured it out. In the fullness of time, Eve gave birth to a son. She wrapped him in the hem of her garment and presented him to Adam. Eve said, God has given me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. She did not stop. I have gotten a man from the Lord. Now, the Lord there is to Adam, not God. She spoke this because this time Samuel was not the sire, and that's a sire, like a horse. The face of the infant shone like the face of the sun. The thing about Seth is said to have been like Noah. They were the illuminous ones, maybe the true star seed child. I don't know. This was because the spark that was in Adam and the spark that was in Eve had been restored by the invisible spirit. Mingled within the child burned double bright. The name of the boy was Seth, who is the first in descent of Adam. Well, we'll have to stop there. We'll pick this up tomorrow because it does continue. It only gets more intense. So, yeah, I know, intense. I told you. And we've got a couple of more sections, and then it gets, and I'm really debating this. I'm not sure if I'm going to actually put the incantations for Lilith. I don't think I'm going to do that. Don't want, something that, who knows, people's imaginations go crazy. So anyway, yeah, folks, this was interesting, and again, not saying it's true, not saying it's not true. I mean, it's just, it's obviously a much different version of the story the world knows. However, again, as I've said, all my life, I've heard these stories. Someone had to have known about it. Someone had to have thought about this. Someone had that hidden knowledge. This is what it is. It's hidden knowledge. And, it's on a lot of it's repulsive. I mean, it's disgusting, to be candid with you. But, I've seen a lot of things in life that are disgusting and repulsive. Yeah, Richard, it is. It is intense. I warned everyone, told you it is intense, and it's only going to get a little more deeper. And I tell you, when we get to the end, before the incantations, what I appreciate about this story, if Lilith is behind this, if Anonymous, Nameo, excuse me. At least they're being honest. It's a lot more than what I got out of religion. I mean, I'd rather have someone just tell me, hey, I'm a thief. Okay, I appreciate that. You know? But it's when they come and say, well, I'm an honest man, but I'm going to rob you blind behind your back. You go, what? You know, the deception. And thank you. Thank you, Ruby. I'm reading some of the comments there. I shouldn't do that. But yeah, it's just the way it is. So we'll continue. I've got a couple of other books lined up on this, behind this, that'll, I think, continue to give us, again, a different point of view, but all seems to be driving to the same field. Very interesting. And I contend, as we'll talk tonight on the Steiger's perspective, the Dragon Wars, we're going to get into the Lilith story more. I'll actually be doing more of the reading from the book itself. And I think let me just say this. There's 380 plus people in here. We've done something. All around now, we're seeing Lilith. We're seeing Inanna. We're seeing groups worldwide proclaiming allegiance, worship. I don't go for the worship part, but do you think that the energy that has been flowing primarily to the male side of this thing is now being deviated here, and she's awakening? She's gaining her strength. I wonder what else we're going to be seeing. Okay, folks, I appreciate you. Thank you. We'll see you here tomorrow. We're going to get into this. We'll send it off for a bang because, yeah, it gets real interesting. But we're learning structure here. I look at this as, doing an org chart. I mean, I'm getting a different point, but I can see references to everything I've read since I awoke to this. Yeah, amazing. Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. And hey, you intelligent people, give me your comments. You want the book, just email me and I'll make sure you get a copy of it. All right. Love and light to all of you folks. Thank you. Just invoke protection and blessing on all of us, right? Favor, abundant favor. All right, folks. We'll talk soon. All right. Bye-bye.